Well, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's session of the Bible Study Hickory on this 21st day of August 2022. This is going to be our basic Hebrew portion of the afternoon, and then right around 3 o'clock, we will hand it over to Brother Sheets for our continued study in the book of Genesis. So again, we have been taking a look at the Hebrew alphabet, Hebrew vowels, and also the way that these letters come together to form syllables and thus to form Hebrew words. So just as a little bit of a review, again, the Hebrew alphabet is written from right to left, and it consists of 22 letters, those 22 letters being Aleph, Beth, Gimel, Dalet, Hey, Wow, Zion, Chet, Teth, Yod, Kaf, Lamed, Mem, Nun, Samek, Ayin, Pei, Sade, Kof, Resh, Sin, Shin, and Tau. And so those are the 22 letters, the 22 consonants of the Hebrew alphabet.
Are you going
And
to go to a larger screen, or are you going to do that differently?
um,
Showing more almost like a presenter view with the column on the left.
sure, I can do that. So here,
Good.
yeah, yeah. So here we have, that's not,
There
okay.
should be.
All right. So we have then, and so these are the consonants of the.
Yeah.
I'm getting ready to change from the PowerPoint here in just a second.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, this is just that brief review. So of these letters, we have some of these letters which can be classified as Begad Kafat letters. What that means is these are letters that have two different pronunciations. They can be pronounced hard or they can be pronounced soft. And so these letters are the Beth, Gimel, Dalet, Kaf, Pei, and Tau. And so the Beth, hard pronunciation, would be pronounced B, soft pronunciation V. The Gimel, hard, G, soft pronunciation G. Again, don't worry so much about that. You'll do that naturally as you're pronouncing the Hebrew words. The Daleth, hard pronunciation D, soft pronunciation V, like a voiced TH sound. Then we have the Kaf, hard pronunciation K, like our K sound. Soft pronunciation K. Again, you'll do that naturally. Then the Pei, hard pronunciation P, soft pronunciation F, like our F sound. And then we also have the Tau, hard pronunciation T, soft pronunciation F, soft TH in that way. So these are the Begad Kafat letters, Beth, Gimel, Daleth, Kaf, Pei, Tau. And then we also have what we call the gutturals, which are going to be the letters Aleph, Hey, Chet, and Ayin. And these are letters which are pronounced in the back of the throat. And as a side note as well, the resh sometimes behaves like a guttural. Now, the reason that I am bringing this up at this particular point about the Begad Kafat letters and the gutturals is that these letters do play, there are certain things that are kind of interesting about these letters when it comes to Hebrew syllables. And so, especially for instance, when we are dealing with the Begad Kafat letters, the Begad Kafat letters, they take what we call a Dagesh Lene. And you can see basically that looks like a dot in the middle of the letter. And when this dagesh lene is in one of those begad kafat letters, Beth Gimel Daleth, Kaf Pei Tau, then that dagesh lene has a tendency to harden the pronunciation. And a key note to notice as well is that the dagesh lene never occurs in a begad kafat letter when that letter is preceded by a vowel. So the dagesh lene will occur in a begad kafat letter, Beth Gimel Daleth Kaf Pei Tau, when the begad kafat letter occurs at the beginning of a word and that particular word is not preceded by any other sound, or when the begad kafat letter is preceded by a consonant sound. As an example, we can come on over here to Genesis chapter 1, verses 1 through 5, especially. And so we were actually talking a little bit about this particular passage right before we got started. But notice right here, the very first word here in our text, Bereshith. So Bereshith, you can see it begins with the Beth, and the Beth has a dot in the middle of it. Now, obviously, because of the fact that this is the very first word in Scripture, this particular word is not preceded by a vowel sound. So thus, the begad kafat letter, the Beth in this instance, takes that dagesh lene to harden the sound. And then, if we come on down just a little bit further, I also see pay right here, al panei the home. So we have the pay right here. Well, here, the pay is preceded by the sound of the lama that's preceded by a consonant sound, which means, once again, the begad kafat letter, in this case the pay, remember those begad kafat letters are Beth Gimel Daleth Kaf Pei Tau. So we have the pay here. When a begad kafat letter is preceded by a consonant sound, it will take the dagesh lene there to harden the sound. Now, as you're looking at this particular passage as well, you are probably noticing that we have dots in the middle of letters that are not Beth Gimel Daleth Kaf Pei Tau. That's because that particular dot is not the dagesh lene. It is actually what we call the dagesh forte, and that is where this second row comes into play here. So we have a dagesh forte here. The dagesh forte looks exactly like the dagesh lene in that it is a dot that occurs in the middle of the consonant. But instead of hardening the pronunciation, what the dagesh forte does is it doubles the pronunciation. It doubles the consonant. And the dagesh forte can occur in any letter, including the begad kafat letters, except for the gutturals. So the dagesh forte can occur in any letter, including the begad kafat letters, but it does not occur in the gutturals. And those gutturals, again, as we saw, are the aleph, hey, ayin, as well as the resh. The resh does not normally take the dagesh forte. The reason that our gutturals do not take the dagesh forte is because it is very hard to double the pronunciation of a letter that is pronounced in the back of the throat. And so because of that, these letters do not take that dagesh forte. That will come into play, that particular information will come into play once we get into the article, probably in the next couple of weeks here. But so notice as well, the dagesh forte, it can occur in any letter, including the begad kafat letters, except for the gutturals, and it doubles the pronunciation. And so you're probably wondering at this particular point, how do I determine the difference between a Dagesh Lene in a Begad Gefat letter and a Dagesh Forte in a Begad Gefat letter. Basically, we were saying that the Dagesh Lene never occurs in a Begad Gefat letter when that letter is preceded by a vowel sound. So again, a Dagesh Forte then can occur in a Begad Gefat letter when it is preceded by a vowel sound. So thus, if you see what could be either a Dagesh Lene or a Dagesh Forte in a Begad Gefat letter, and the Begad Gefat letter is preceded by a vowel sound, then it's going to be a Forte, not a Lene. So now let's just go ahead and we'll go through some of this here just to make it a little bit clearer. So as I look through here, I see very clearly I have a dot in the middle of a letter right here in the middle of my Beith. Now, the Beith, that's one of my Begad Gefat letters. Beith Gimel Daleth Kaf Pei Tau. So I know that this could be either a Dagesh Lene or it could be a Dagesh Forte. But because it is not preceded by a vowel sound, I know that this is a Lene. Was there a question? I thought I heard a voice.
I just wanted to say, can you check your microphone volume and see if it needs to be turned down just a little bit? You're getting a little bit of distortion, and it may be the microphone.
All right, let me see what's going on here.
Are you on the studio or the camera?
I was on the camera mic. Now I've switched to the studio mic.
Okay. I think it sounds a little better already.
Okay, very good. So we'll go ahead and we'll use that. I wonder, yeah, sometimes I get a little bit of an reverberation with the camera mic. So
that's what it was.
Yeah. So it, I think what happens is I don't have enough cushioning on the walls in here. It's a little sparse. So need to see what I can do about that. But so thus, because of the fact that our Beith here not preceded by a vowel sound, that dot is going to be the Lene. Now again, I come on over to the word bara, and I can see I've got another letter that has a dot in the middle of it. And so this particular word, this particular letter, this is the Beith again. So the Beith is going to be one of the Begad Gefat letters, Beith Gimel Daleth Kaf Pei Tau. So it's a Begad Gefat letter, could therefore be either a Lene or a Forte, but it is preceded by a consonant sound. It's preceded by the sound of the tau there. Thus, I know that this is going to be a Lene. Then Elohim, I don't have any Dageshes there. Eighth, no Dageshes. But then here, with this letter, I have another Dagesh. And this is going to be a Sheen. Now let's see, what were those Begad Gefat letters again? Beith Gimel Daleth Kaf Pei Tau. So Sheen is not one of my Begad Gefat letters, and the Dagesh Lene can only occur in the Begad Gefat letters, so therefore I know this cannot be a Lene. This must therefore be a Forte. So thus that is a Forte inside of the Sheen there, doubling the pronunciation of the Sheen. So therefore, in this particular instance, I would not pronounce this word as ha-shemayim. I would say hash-shemayim. And you can hear the doubling of the Sheen there when I say that. So coming on down a little bit further. Wa'eth ha'aretz. Again, no Dageshes anywhere in there. Let's see. I see what could be a dagesh here, but I know from those vowels that we were looking at, let's see, what were those vowels again? So we have the kamates here, long A pronounced ah, as in of. Then I have the long E, the sere here, A, the hirik yod, E, the holum or the holum wow, O, and then, oh, look at that, a shurik, long U sound, that oo, and that is exactly what we have here in this instance. So this here, this is not actually a dagesh, that is just the normal form of the shurik. So this does not fit with what we're looking at the moment. Same thing here, this is another shurik right there. Now we come on down here, Choshek al Panay. And now here again, I have a letter that has a dagesh in it. So thus, in this instance, let's see. So those Begad Kafat letters were Beth Gimel Daleth Kaf Pei Tal. And this is a pei here. So it's a Begad Kafat letter. It's preceded by the consonant sound, the lameth. So thus I know that this is going to be another lene here. See, I look on down here. Oh, ruach. But this here, this is another shurik. So it's neither a lene nor a forte. That's just the normal form of the vowel there. And then I come on across and, oh, look at this. I've got another pei with either a lene or a forte in the middle of it. So thus, let's see, Beth Gimel Daleth Kaf Pei Tal. So I know then this is a pei, this is one of my Begad Kafat letters, and it's preceded by a consonant sound. So I know that this is going to be another lene here. And then as I come on over, oh, look at this. I've got another letter with a dagesh in the middle of it, but this is a mem here. Those Begad Kafat letters were Beth Gimel Daleth Kaf Pei Tal. So mem is not a Begad Kafat letter, which means it can't take the dagesh lene, which means this must be the forte, doubling the sound of that particular mem. Then if we come on down a little bit further, oh, look at this. I've got another dagesh in a yod. Now let's see. Yod, I don't think that was one of my Begad Kafat letters, was it? Beth Gimel Daleth Kaf Pei Tal. Nope, didn't say yod. So thus, this cannot be a lene. This must therefore be a forte, doubling the pronunciation of that particular yod. And then again, we come on down and, oh, look here. Here is another yod with a dagesh in it. And I know because a yod is not a Begad Kafat letter, that this must be a forte. And then, I've got another one right here. That is a kaf. So let's see, Beth Gimel Daleth Kaf Pei Tal. So kaf is one of my Begad Kafat letters. So this could be either a lene or a forte, but if I come back up to the preceding word, the preceding word ends in a resh. That's a consonant sound. So thus, and the dagesh lene occurs in a Begad Kafat letter when that particular letter is not preceded by a vowel sound. So this is a lene. And then I come on down here and I have another yod with a dagesh in it, but I know that a yod is not a Begad Kafat letter, Beth Gimel Daleth Kaf Pei Tal. So thus this cannot be a lene, it must be a forte. And then I come to this right here. So this is a daleth, and this particular daleth has a dagesh in the middle of it. And a daleth is in fact one of my Begad Kafat letters, Beth Gimel Daleth Kaf Pei Tal. And so the question therefore is this going to be a lene or is this going to be a forte? Well, in order to determine that, I need to take a look and see what precedes it. And what precedes it is this right here, that particular beth. And the beth is pointed with a schwa. Now, we talked about this a little bit last week. We're going to cover it a little bit in more detail here and then especially next week. But those two vertical dots that we see underneath the beth there, that's what we call a schwa. There are two types of schwas, one of which is a vocal schwa, the other of which is a silent schwa. A vocal schwa opens a syllable, a silent schwa closes a syllable. And you can see they both look basically alike. We do have these composite schwas over here. I'm not going to worry about those at the moment, but we have what could be either a vocal schwa or a silent schwa. And as we said here, a vocal schwa opens a syllable and a silent schwa closes the syllable. When I take a look at this particular word here, Wayavdale, and I've actually kind of given away the answer here by how I just pronounced that, but that's all right. Notice the vowel right there underneath the yod. The yod there is pointed with a pathak. And if we come back over to our vowel chart here, we can see the pathak right here. Here's the pathak. And notice that it is a short vowel. Short vowels have a tendency in Hebrew to prefer closed, unaccented syllables. So just a little bit of that side note. We discussed that a little bit when we were talking about the kamates versus the kamates hatuf. So short vowels prefer closed, unaccented syllables. And we have also indicated that most Hebrew words are accented on the last syllable. So the last syllable here would be the Daleth, Seire, Lameth. So thus, this syllable here, where we have that pathak underneath the yod, is an unaccented syllable, which means that that syllable must also be closed, which means that this schwa, therefore, is closing the syllable and is therefore silent. The daleth, therefore, is following the consonant sound of the beth, and therefore that dagesh that we have in the daleth is in fact going to be a lene, hardening the sound of the daleth. So wayavdale. Then we come on over here and we have another one, bane. Notice again, I've got what could be either a dagesh lene or a dagesh forte in the beth being a begav kafat letter, beth gimel daleth, kaf pei tau. And it is preceded by the final mem, so it's preceded by a consonant sound. This is therefore going to be another lene. Then as we come on down, you can see that's another shurik there. You're wondering, wait a minute, we just said last week that syllables in Hebrew could not begin with a vowel sound. That is correct. That is a special case there that we will get to in a couple of weeks here. But coming on down, but I'm not going to get into that right now. Then as we come on down here, we can see again, Vayikra. So I've got another dagesh in the yod here, But the yod is not a begad kafat letter. Beit gimel daleth kaf pei tau. This therefore cannot be a lene. It must therefore be a forte. And then as we come on through, and we do not have any other dagashes there. But that is just a brief overview of how it is that we can determine the difference between a lene and a forte. One of the things that you will find is that Hebrew is a very regular language. All of the rules and regulations that we're talking about here, it is very important for Hebrew to know those rules and to know them well. That's why I went ahead and drilled the different begad kafat letters as we were going through this. But Hebrew is, in fact, a very, very regular language. And so thus, if you apply the rules, you begin to really see the language begin to unfold in that way. Now, another thing, you're probably wondering why it is that I spent so much time on the Dagesh forte versus the Dagesh lene. The reason for that being, especially once you start getting into Hebrew verbs, there is a particular Hebrew verb form where in order to be able to tell what the verb form is, you need to be able to tell the difference between a Dagesh forte and a Dagesh lene. As a matter of fact, what we call the piel and the puel stems here. So the piel and the puel. These are, last week I introduced the term hifiel, which is the causative action in Hebrew. The piel and the puel, this is going to be an intensive action. And again, this is free. We'll get into this a little bit more a little bit later. But the piel and the puel, intensive action. So there's been some sort of an intensification in the action that is involved. And one of the diagnostic features of the piel and the puel is a Dagesh forte in the middle letter. In the middle root letter. And so thus, that is why, say for instance, looking here at the word wayavdale, if I did not understand the difference between the Dagesh lene and the Dagesh forte, I might have seen that particular word here, so wayavdale, and have seen that Dagesh in the middle root letter, and I might have thought, oh, well, that is going to be a piel verb. But because of the fact that this is a lene and not a forte, I know that this cannot be a piel form. This is, in fact, as we will see as we dig a little bit deeper into this, this is actually hifiel, which is a causative action. And so that is one of the differences, and it does create a difference in meaning, which is why it's very important to go ahead and take a look at that difference and understand the difference between the lene and the forte. Are there any questions or comments at this particular point? I know I saw a comment come into the comment section there. Let's see, what was that particular comment? Okay, are there any children's books that are good that I can read that will teach me Hebrew? To be honest, I would not go with children's books for learning Hebrew. The reason being, in the children's books that exist, they have a tendency to teach modern Hebrew rather than biblical Hebrew. And there are a number of differences between modern Hebrew and biblical Hebrew. One of the primary ones being the pronunciation of this particular letter here. This is the wow, but in modern Hebrew, due to the influence of the Yiddish, which was influenced by the German, they do not pronounce this as a w, they pronounce it v, and thus they pronounce its name vav. And so thus I would not go there. What I might recommend to you is you can go ahead and take a look at the preceding video recordings of this particular Bible study that we've been doing, and that would give a good introduction to those consonants and those vowels. And then also the textbook that we use for elementary Hebrew is a practical grammar for classical Hebrew by Jacob Weingreen. And so getting a copy of that would be beneficial, and then you can kind of go through that at your own pace as well. Okay, anything else? Okay, very good. Let's see here. Well, why don't we go ahead and stop there for today then, and we'll take a little bit of a break, and then I'll turn it over to you, sir.
I do have one comment, if I may,
Absolutely, please, sir.
and that's for just, you were talking about how regular Hebrew is and its structure and everything to be able to read it. And you know, so many people think it's such a difficult language and this and that and the other. It's actually an extremely simple language, but you would expect that the language which God built into Adam and Eve would be perfect. It would be perfectly simple, and it would be perfectly regular as well. Modern Hebrew, they have introduced different ideas. They've a lot of different vocabulary and things, and they don't pronounce with the distinction that the Masoretes demonstrated was in the original text. There are a lot of things there, but point being this: when I was in seminary, Dr. James Price, who was my primary instructor there, I guess I call him my mentor, he had actually done, and this would have been probably in the 70s, something like that, maybe in the mid 70s, early 70s. But he had actually done his dissertation, his doctoral dissertation, on what was called then machine translation of the Hebrew text, of the Masoretic text. And what we would call it now, we'd say computer translation. And the interesting thing, he not only built this whole program to do it, he also built his own fonts to be used and the accent marks and everything like that. And then when he presented his results, the results were so amazingly close to the way we translate in English that quite honestly, it was Dropsy University, which has since been absorbed by the University of Pennsylvania, but that the people there did not know enough about what he had done to give him his doctorate. So they refused to accept his dissertation until they had called in, I guess, a Jewish scholar from Jerusalem. They had to call in a Jewish scholar from Jerusalem to try to evaluate. The problem was the Jewish scholar knew Hebrew, but he did not know anything about computers or machine translation, as we call it. So to find someone to evaluate that side, they brought in someone from Japan. They brought in a Japanese man, not a Christian, not even a Jew. but someone who knew computers, who was an expert in computer and writing text and things like that. So they had to bring in these two experts. And what's interesting is these two experts agreed that they did not know enough to evaluate whether or not what he had done was accurate. And at first, Dropsy was not going to accept his dissertation and give him the doctorate. But when they realized that in the case of this man, they were dealing with the man who knew the most, he was the expert in the world on what he was doing. And how do you have someone evaluate an expert? It's like somebody saying God didn't write well. It's absurd. But they did give him his doctorate, and I was glad because he was one of my instructors, and well, in Hebrew and Aramaic as well. So and other things. But it's just kind of interesting that the Hebrew language that God had built into Adam is so perfectly constructed. And as Rebecca said, it's so regular that you could even build a computer program to translate the Hebrew text into English. Now, and that's all the way through it. That's kind of amazing to think about it, because most computer programs are, well, they have to be programmed by people, and then they have problems. So anyway, very good, Becca. I'll turn it back to you.
All right. Very good. So we'll go ahead. We'll stop here then and take a little bit of a break and turn it back to you.
So we'll start back at about 3:15 Eastern Standard Time. So.